I failed more times than I can count, but that's how I finally succeeded. Failure isn't the opposite of success. It's a part of it. My name is Ethan, and I'm 42 years old. I'm a successful entrepreneur now, a man who runs a company with 1,000 employees and a valuation in the hundreds of millions. But for a very long time, I was just a man who failed. And I failed more times than I can count. My story isn't about a moment of sudden success. It's about a lifetime of failure. It's a story about a man who was so focused on the destination that he didn't realize the journey was the point all along. The first failure was in college. I was 21 years old, a hotshot engineering student with a big ego and an even bigger plan. My friend, Liam, he was 22 then, and I had a great idea. It was an app, a new way to share music. We were so excited. We spent all our time and all our money on it. We worked for months, pulling all-nighters, fueled by coffee and dreams. We were so sure it was going to be a success. We were so sure it was going to be a billion-dollar idea. We launched it, and nothing happened. No one cared. No one downloaded it. It was a complete, utter failure. I was heartbroken. I felt like a fraud. I felt like a complete failure. I dropped out of school. I gave up on my dreams. I gave up on myself. The next failure was in my late 20s. I was 26, a quiet, introverted man who was still living with his parents. My mom, Sarah, who was in her late 50s then, was a gentle, kind woman. She saw my pain. She saw my sadness. She saw that I was a broken man. She told me to get up. She told me to try again. She told me that failure isn't the opposite of success. She told me that it's a part of it. She gave me her life savings, $25,000, a small fortune to her. She told me to start a business. She told me to chase my dreams. I felt a strange mix of gratitude and fear. I was so scared. I was so scared to fail again. But I didn't want to disappoint her. I didn't want to disappoint myself. I started a business. It was a small tech company, a simple idea to create a new way to manage data. I was so passionate. I was so determined. I worked for months, pulling all-nighters, fueled by coffee and dreams. My friend, Liam, joined me. He had a great idea. He wanted to help me. I felt a strange sense of hope. We were so sure it was going to be a success. We were so sure it was going to be a billion-dollar idea. We launched it, and for a few months, it was a success. We had customers, we had money, we had a sense of purpose. We felt like we were on top of the world. But then, a bigger company, a bigger, better company with more resources and more money, came and stole our idea. They did it faster. They did it better. They did it cheaper. We were out of business. We were out of money. We were out of hope. I was heartbroken. I felt like a complete failure. I had lost my mom's life savings. I had lost my friend's trust. I had lost everything. I was so lost. I was so broken. I felt a strange mix of sadness and anger. I was so angry at the world. I was so angry at myself. I was so angry at my mom for believing in me. I was so angry at myself for letting her down. I went back to my parents' house, a complete failure. I couldn't look my mom in the eye. I couldn't look my dad, Robert, he was in his late 50s then, in the eye. I couldn't look myself in the mirror. I was a broken man. I was a ghost. I was a man who had lost everything. A few months went by. I was just a quiet, sad presence in my parents' house. I didn't talk much. I didn't smile. I just sat there, a ghost in my own life. My dad, a man of quiet strength, sat me down one day. Ethan, he said, his voice quiet but firm. You're a good person. You're a kind person. You're a smart person. You're not a failure. You're just a person who failed. And that's okay. The biggest failure isn't trying and failing. It's not trying at all. He just looked at me, a calm, patient look in his eyes. He didn't say anything else. He didn't have to. I knew what he meant. He was telling me to get up. He was telling me to try again. He was telling me to live. I tried again. This time, I didn't have any money. I didn't have any hope. All I had was a broken heart and a small, quiet sense of determination. I was 33 now. My mom was in her early 60s, and my dad was in his early 60s. They were both getting older. I knew I didn't have much time left. I wanted to make them proud. I wanted to make myself proud. I started a new business. It was a simple business. I was a freelance web designer. I would just build websites for small businesses. I didn't have a plan. I didn't have a dream. I just wanted to survive. For the first few months, it was a failure. I couldn't get any clients. I couldn't get any money. I was just working and failing. I would sit in my small, lonely apartment, staring at a blank screen, a strange mix of despair and hope in my heart. I was so tired. I was so exhausted. I was so close to giving up. But I didn't. I just kept going. I just kept working. I just kept failing. I felt like a ghost, a quiet, invisible presence in a world that was moving too fast. What would you do in this situation? Would you give up? Would you keep going? Then, something happened. A small, quiet miracle. I got my first client. It was a small, local bakery. The owner, Mrs. Davis, was in her late 50s, a kind, gentle woman with a warm smile. She had heard about me from a friend. She had heard that I was a good person. She had heard that I was a hard worker. She had heard that I was a good web designer. I was so grateful. I was so happy. I was so relieved. I worked for months, pulling all-nighters, fueled by coffee and hope. I built her a beautiful, simple website. She was so happy. She was so grateful. She paid me. It was a small amount of money, but it felt like $1 million. It felt like a lifetime of success. The next few years were a series of small, quiet failures and small, quiet successes. I got more clients. I got more money. I got more hope. I got more confidence. I was no longer a ghost. I was a person with a purpose, a person with a dream. I was 35 now, and I had a sense of self-worth that I had never had before. I was still failing, but I was also succeeding. I was no longer afraid of failure. I had learned to love it. I had learned to see it as a part of the journey. A part of the story. A part of me. The next failure was a big one. I was 37 now. I had a small, successful business. I had a team of 5 people. I had a small, but beautiful office. I had a sense of purpose. My friend, Liam, he was 38 now, was my partner. He had a great idea. It was an app, a new way to manage data for small businesses. It was a brilliant idea. We were so excited. We spent all our time and all our money on it. We worked for months, pulling all-nighters, fueled by coffee and dreams. We were so sure it was going to be a success. We were so sure it was going to be a billion-dollar idea. We launched it, and nothing. Nothing happened. No one cared. No one downloaded it. It was a complete, utter failure. My team was disappointed. My partner was heartbroken. I was heartbroken. I had lost everything. Again, I had lost my business. I had lost my team. I had lost my partner. I had lost everything I had worked for. My life was a series of broken promises, a series of failed dreams, a series of dead ends. I was so lost. I was so broken. I was a man who had lost everything. Again, I went back to my parents' house. They were in their late 60s now, a little older, a little more fragile. But their love was just as strong. I walked in, and I just sat there. I didn't say a word. My mom just came over, and she just hugged me. She didn't say a word. She didn't have to. I just sat there, in her arms, and I cried. I cried for a love that was gone. I cried for a life that was gone. I cried for the two people who had given me everything. My dad, Robert, just sat there, watching me. His face was full of love, of understanding, of a quiet, patient wisdom. He just sat there, and he just waited. He waited for me to stop crying. He waited for me to stop being angry. He waited for me to start living again. He didn't say a word. He didn't have to. I knew what he meant. I went back to my office. It was empty now. It was cold and quiet. I just sat there, and I just looked. I looked at the empty desks. I looked at the empty chairs. I looked at the ghosts of my dreams. I just sat there, and I just waited. I waited for the sadness to pass. I waited for the anger to pass. I waited for the fear to pass. I just sat there, and I just waited. I didn't give up. I didn't go back to my parents' house. I didn't go back to my old life. I just stayed. I stayed and I just worked. I worked on a new idea. A simple idea. A simple, beautiful idea. An idea that was not about money. Not about success. Not about a billion-dollar dream. It was about something else. It was about a person. A person who had failed. A person who had lost everything. A person who was just a person. I was 40 now. My mom was in her early 70s. My dad in his early 70s. They were still here, but they were a little older, a little more fragile. I had a new idea. It was a simple idea. It was an app. A simple app. A simple, beautiful app. It was a tool for people who had failed. It was a tool for people who had lost everything. It was a tool for people who were just people. It was a tool to help people find hope. It was a tool to help people find themselves. My friend, Liam, joined me. He was 41 now. He was a little more tired, a little more cynical, but he was still my friend. He saw my passion. He saw my determination. He saw my love for this idea. He helped me. He helped me build it. We worked for months, pulling all-nighters, fueled by coffee and hope. We were so sure it was going to be a success. We were so sure it was going to be a billion-dollar idea. But this time, it was different. We weren't doing it for the money. We weren't doing it for the success. We were doing it for the people. We were doing it for ourselves. We were doing it for the ghosts of our past. What would you do in this situation? Would you keep going? Would you give up? We launched it, and it was a success. A small, quiet, beautiful success. People downloaded it. People used it. People loved it. It was a simple, beautiful app, but it was so much more than that. It was a tool of hope. It was a tool of love. It was a tool of a lifetime of failures, a lifetime of heartbreak, a lifetime of learning. It was a tool of a man who had failed more times than he could count, but a man who had finally succeeded. My life is still full of chaos and noise. But now, I know how to find the silence. I know how to find the peace. I know how to find the moments that matter. The failures were not a waste of time. They were a gift. They were a lesson. They were a beautiful, painful tapestry of my life. I'm a successful entrepreneur now, but I'm still a man who failed. And I'm still a man who is learning. I'm still a man who is living. My story isn't about a moment of sudden success. It's about a lifetime of failure. It's about a man who was so focused on the destination that he didn't realize the journey was the point all along. The journey was full of love, full of heartbreak, full of dreams, full of promises. And full of failure, and I wouldn't have it any other way. What do you think? Is success all about winning, or is it about what you learn along the way? Let me know in the comments below. If you found this story inspiring, please like, share, and subscribe to support our channel.